Multifamily Mindset
podcast. Think bigger.
Hey, what's going on, my friends? Welcome to another episode here on the MFM podcast, where this past week we had Ryan and Lucas from TR Capital Partners. And what great examples of commitment and consistency. These guys' understanding of the importance of things like proper planning, failure and failing forward, and positivity and optimism really shined through in their interview with Zach this past week. When I think of these two, I think of vision. It was paramount. It was obvious in their interview. They know where they are going. They not only know where they're going, they know what they're doing. They know where they are at in the process on their journey. Obviously, they know where they're headed. And because of all of this, they're doing a really great job of figuring the how out. And that's one of the most important components that I want to share with on today's episode, is that when it comes to a goal, like here, heavily and consistently we talk about multifamily syndication, real estate, doing not just a deal, but creating a system for doing deals and becoming successful as an investor. It's important to note that to do this, you don't need to know the how. And what I'm talking about is specifically at that starting point, at that entry point, when you have decided, you've made the decision, and you come into a situation, a new venture, a new goal. It's important to remember, you don't need to know the how. But what you do need to know in order to generate success over time is you need to know what it is you're striving to accomplish. What's your aim? And then you need to also know, this is where honesty, which is one of the heavy principles that I teach within what we do, is where you're currently at. You must be honest with where you're currently at, and then know where you're headed. These two and their story, it was very evident that they know these things. And because of it, again, they are figuring out the how really well. There was a couple other notes that I wanted to share before we dive into kind of the meat of today's episode. In listening to their story, something that was really important that I think is worth noting for everybody listening to the podcast today is that they went all in on investor relations after some time in their learning here in the multifamily space. It is like drinking from a fire hose when you first start in something new, especially something like multifamily syndication. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of hats to wear. And it can be very intimidating. It can be very frustrating. It can rattle you. And these guys learned through that experience that in order for them to be successful, in order for you to be successful, any of us, we don't have to be great at everything. You don't need to know everything. You need to know enough to be able to move forward and continue step by step figuring it out. And when they realized this, when that moment came to them, they had the courage to say, what are we really great at, or what are we really good at already, and what do we want to become great at? And it was investor relations. And so they threw their eggs into that basket and went all in. And because of that, that has been a huge contributing factor to their success. That is really important. That is a really important, it takes, I'll strip this down a little bit. It takes actual courage to do that, because it can almost feel like a scarce move, like a scarcity type of situation. But it is actually abundance, and it is actually liberating and freeing to be able to go all in and increase your value as a business, right? As an operation, to be able to go in and say, hey, this is what we know how to do, and we know how to do it really, really well. And then finding those who are great at those other seats, those other hats. Look, something that was also very evident in their story is that not everything has gone perfect for these guys, as is the case for anyone and everyone. Success, if this is the only thing you pull from today's episode, I don't know if this is the phrase, the dime, but here it is.
Hey, listeners, thank you for tuning in to the MFM podcast. We truly appreciate your support and hope you're enjoying the insights from our incredible guests. We have one small favor to ask. Please leave us a review and rating. Your feedback means the world to us. And to show you our appreciation, we're giving away some great prizes to some lucky listeners who leave us a review. So scroll down, share your thoughts, and help us continue to bring valuable content. Thanks, and back to the show.
Success comes with casualties. I've now seen this firsthand in my experience in business. But it's not just experience in business, it's experience everywhere, is that success comes with casualties. Those casualties come in the form of failures, of things that you're not too proud of, things that when you look back, you go, wow, I really could have done better. Those things are crucial steps, crucial parts to your overall success. They're necessary, they're unavoidable, and they're going to happen. It makes me come back to learning. This is actually off the cuff here, but this makes me come back to one of the harder things I had to learn, skills, goals that I had that I've achieved in my life, which was learning a new language, navigating a new country. I moved to the country of Brazil when I was 19 years old. And I remember I had created a goal, not just to speak fluently, but my goal was I wanted the native Brazilians, after I had been there for the 2 years that I was there, at the end of that term, I wanted them to mistaken me for a Brazilian because I spoke Portuguese so well. I spoke so fluently. And that was a lofty goal. And I remember sharing that goal with a native Brazilian, one of my great friends. I call him my paizão. Which means father. He basically trained me and taught me everything I know in those first 6 months. Shout out to Eduardo Rosario. He won't be listening to this, and maybe he will. I don't know. But he told me, Duzão told me that, brother, if you want to do what you just said you want to do, you need to make way more mistakes. You need to speak incorrectly more often and get those things out of your system. And he was like, you need to look like a fool more often, basically. And I was like, took a deep breath, and like that was so scary for me. But I remember it just clicked at the time, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I got to trust this guy. He obviously is Brazilian and speaks fluently, and he knows a thing or two. He was a very smart man, and so I dove head first, and I was like, screw it, I'm going to screw up a lot. I'm going to say a lot of things incorrectly, and I'm not going to hold back. And I raced my way, so to speak, to 10,000 errors. That was kind of the mark. I remember telling me, hey, you want to speak fluently? You need to make at least 10,000 errors. So I was like, okay, I'm off to the races. Let's accrue these failures, these successes through failure. It's not always, my point is this, my friends, it's not always beautiful and easy. In fact, if you're doing it right, oftentimes it's hard and it's challenging. It just is. That's success in business. That's success in the home. That's success in sports. It's hard and it's challenging and it's beautiful. But it's not easy. If it was easy, everybody'd be doing it. And something that I want to add to this process here that I've learned through not just listening to Ryan and Lucas's story, but everyone's story who has been majorly successful throughout the course of my career and the work that I do. And that is that there's another component outside of the what and the where. We've already covered those earlier in the podcast today, and that is the why. And these two, they've been able to check all those boxes. They know what they're striving to accomplish, their aim. They know where they're at in that process, where they're headed, the direction. And they know why they do what they do. And then lastly is the how, right? Which is that fluid step in the process, the one that can be messy at times, the one that is the figuring it out. You don't have to have that figured out. I encourage everybody listening to the podcast today to really define these things out. It might seem simple, but I cannot tell you how many people do not do this, and I implore you to not just dabble, but to really commit and go all in and define these things out. What are you striving to accomplish specifically? Why does that matter? And where are you right now? In order to get to that place, to accomplish the what, you must know where you're at and everything that is missing between where you're currently at and where that place is. As you do those things and define those things out really well, you will find energy and excitement to lean fully into the how. And I can promise you and assure you this, you don't need to know the how perfectly. I am almost 5 years deep into exiting a W-2, starting my own business, doing this work with MFM at this capacity, and having worked with thousands of individuals at this point. And I slow down because it's humbling, because the how is continuing to figure itself out. But what has been constant, has never changed, is what I'm striving to accomplish, which is help others adopt and feed a growth mindset in everything they do. Where I'm headed, where I'm at, and why I do what I do. Hey guys, it's Dallas Pruitt, resident mindset coach and consultant at the Multifamily Mindset. You and your goals are our biggest priority, and we wanted to let you know about an amazing tool we've created to help you achieve greater success in your pursuits. It's called the Think Bigger Journal, and right now we're offering 30% off to our podcast listeners. This journal is an effective and efficient everyday tool designed to help you make the most of your days and feed your priorities. The daily and weekly frameworks are strategically designed to help you defeat distraction and feed real, sustainable progress towards your most important goals. This journal is backed by positive psychology. It's simple to use, easy to integrate into your day-to-day, and yields powerful results. You can go to the link in today's show notes and grab a copy today. And again, make sure you use code MFMPodcast, all one word, for 30% off your next purchase. I'd like to close this week's episode out with a quick story. One I shared on our Mindset Monthly call this past week with our students. It's the story of I wrote the check. And I want to share this because I want to close this out that, again, not everything has gone perfect for these two, but it is amazing to see the success that they have had in the face of that adversity. And there's so much to be learned from that because, like I said, if you're doing it right and you're growing and you're generating success, it is oftentimes going to feel hard and challenging. In fact, that's almost the telltale sign, like, hey, yeah, you're doing it. You're not thinking about it, you're doing it. But I want to talk about this ownership and just kind of come full circle with this story of I wrote the check. I recently read a story in a great book. I shared the specifics in our call. I'm going to kind of keep this anonymous for different purposes because I don't really have full permission from this individual, even though I know they'd give me permission to share this, but it's not my place to share all the specifics. It's theirs. So I'll be brief, but essentially there was this who is now a very successful human being early on in his process. He's a great CEO, impactful leader of a great organization. And this guy, before he became this, was going through the process just like many of you are. And he chose a business venture, made some decisions that were maybe rushed, aggressive, call them what you will. He called them aggressive at the time. and he bit off a little bit more than he could chew. He made some poor financial decisions and got into this brick and mortar business that ultimately he had to sell off and lost substantially from, all with a young family. And it was just part of his journey and process early on where lessons were learned. And it was a very dark and hard time for this person. And he was speaking to one day in his story where he was basically, I wouldn't say angry at God, wouldn't be the right words that he used. It was just frustrated and questioning and praying and asking why me, and faltering and falling into that victim type of mentality, looking for a finger to point, to blame. And he said in that moment he had this almost bolt of lightning feeling that hit him. And the words came to his mind of, I wrote the check, meaning I committed, I made the decision, I chose to do this. And he said it was humbling and liberating all at the same time to take ownership of his situation at that capacity, even in the midst of all of that adversity and challenge. And that's the level of ownership and recognition and commitment and understanding that it takes to really generate high levels of success. Like I said, my friends, I have learned, as many of you have, and many of you are learning right now, that in this space and any other industry, at any other capacity of doing great work, it's not easy. It's hard and it's challenging and it's beautiful and it requires full ownership. I wrote the check. Remember those words. Next time you feel like going down the rabbit hole of pointing a finger and looking to set up shop in it, or set up camp in a camp that isn't a productive, liberating, freeing, wonderful camp. Just use those words. I wrote the check. You made the decision. This is your lot that you chose. And that is liberating, knowing that. And know this, you are your most powerful tool for change, and you do have the capacity, and you can grow the skills, and you can grow the attributes, and you can become exactly what it is you've set out to accomplish and do and be. My friends, I'm grateful, as always, to be able to spend a little bit of time each week here on the podcast with you all. And please continue to rate and review the show. Please continue to engage with us. We're loving the evolution of this podcast, of this community. Continue to think bigger, and we'll always be here to help you do just that and live better. And we'll see you guys next time on the podcast.
Multifamily Mindset Podcast.